Digging all the space. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Sleuth Intuition channel. I am your host, Patrick Vallejos, and we are broadcasting to the world live from Phoenix, Arizona. Today, we are diving into the Idaho college murder case, also known as the Bryan Kohberger case. So I do want to welcome everybody in. All right. So in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, 4 University of Idaho students were fatally stabbed in an off-campus residence in Moscow, Idaho. On December 30th, suspect Bryan Christopher Kohberger was arrested in Monroe County, Pennsylvania on 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary. Prosecutors are seeking the death penalty. A jury trial is scheduled to begin on August 11th, 2025 in Boise, Idaho. Idaho lawmakers have advanced a bill to make the state's newly revived firing squad its main method of execution as the quadruple murder trial of aspiring criminologist and alleged co-ed killer Bryan Kohberger approaches. The bill H0037 has advanced to the Idaho House floor after clearing the Judiciary, Rules and Administration Committee Tuesday. Bill sponsor Rep. Bruce Skog, who previously pushed for legislation that restored the firing squad as a backup option to lethal injection, argued that the botched lethal injection of condemned serial killer Thomas Eugene Creech last year highlights problems with that method. And we covered that. You guys remember Thomas Eugene Creech? Let me share my screen real quick.
My veins a couple of nights before, and they see exactly where the veins were at. I could see them. I watched them map it. So that I thought, man, I'm gone.
That's Creech there.
3.5 months ago, Thomas Creech narrowly avoided death after a death warrant was signed. Idaho's longest-serving death row inmate was supposed to be executed in February, but after 8 attempts, an Idaho Department of Correction medical team was not able to get an IV into him.
Creech and his wife reached out to me recently. He wanted to finally share why he believes he dodged the state-sponsored execution and what it was like. A judge sentenced Creech to death in the early 80s, saying Creech, quote, intends to keep on killing and can't be stopped. Decades later, Creech says he wants people to see he's a changed man. Around 10 o'clock in the morning on February 28th.
I fully,
Just FYI, Creech is a prolific serial killer. Like, this dude is an absolute nightmare of a person.
believed that I'm going to die.
Thomas Creech expected to take his final breath.
I had convinced myself that that was it. So they came in to the death cell, handcuffed me, strapped me to the board, and then they put me on a gurney and they wheeled me in to the execution room. They started adjusting my hands and legs to strap me down. And then the warden told them to go ahead and proceed with the execution.
Yeah, that must have
I
been
looked
scary.
over to the right, and I saw my wife sitting there. She had the most devastating, horrible, terrorized look on her face that I have ever seen in my life.
His wife, Leanne, was crying, sitting next to his priest. His son was there. Creech says he looked mad.
They started in my right arm, up by my elbow, and that was the first place that they poked me. I could feel it.
Creech remembers a total of 10 attempts, but IDOC says they tried and failed 8 times to establish an IV line where they'd inject pentobarbital into Creech's veins.
I don't know if it was wishful thinking or I actually saw, but I thought I saw angels standing on side of my bed.
Angel of death, maybe.
And I think I started crying, and I pointed up to the sky and told my wife I was sorry.
Creech tells me his veins collapsed, meaning the veins walls squeezed shut, preventing blood from flowing through.
So this guy lucked out. But Creech is a piece of shit. And so is Brian Koberger. Here's a 1981 interview with Thomas Creech. We're not going to watch the whole thing. Absolutely, Cheeks. No doubt. I mean, look at this motherfucker.
Coming down the road. Guess the hangman is coming. Coming down the road. Butte Jail in Portland. And while I was there, they sent the people to my house to find out, thinking my wife knew where the drugs and the book was at. Was there a book? Yeah, they were. But she didn't know anything. So when they found out she didn't know anything, they raped her and then threw her out the window thinking it would kill her, but she lived through it. And she was able to identify two of the people.
Yeah, well, anyway, you guys get the point on this guy. So I think today we're going to talk a little bit about the firing squad. Are you guys familiar with that? Let's take a look at some of these photographs. And also looks like they released Brian Koberger's medical records to the prosecution. They're just working out on how to file them and to work out the privacy. Man, looks crazy, huh? Imagine having to sit in that chair. Hey, Don. Can I throw up now? Hey, thank you for the donation, Don. I appreciate that. It means a lot to me, man. We definitely need it. You see the sandbags here? Probably to catch the ricochets or anything off target. I think this is the one in Utah. This is not Idaho. I think this is Utah. They actually recently executed a man by firing squad. So these little holes right here, these are kind of like the firing ports. So the gunmen, they'll have rifles and they'll be back here in this room pointing the gun or the barrel through those slots there and aiming them directly at this chair. But when they do it, they'll have the sandbags and everything set up there. And on each side, you have viewing rooms, one for the victims and then one for the accused. You can kind of see it. Oh, sorry. You can kind of see the other viewing room right here on this side. Danny B says, have you heard about the story behind the movie Scream? Could have inspired him as well. Seems similar. Well, apparently he was like bullied really bad, and he's kind of he's trying to say that he doesn't deserve to be executed because he was bullied and it affected his mental health and he's a little bit off his rocker. They're saying that that contributed to the crime. Danny, have you seen the actual Scream murders with those two young boys who killed their friend? But I do want to welcome everybody in. Miss Dog Lover, Cheeks, Boston Christian, Christine, Mary C. Right on time, Mary. Mustang, always good to see you, Mustang. Cindy. Did I get you, Miss Dog Lover? Miss Dog Lover. Audrey Abbott. My guy Don. She Warrior. I'm sure I missed somebody. Jerry. Rain Dancer. Stephanie. Good to see you, Stephanie. Exactly, Cheeks. He wasn't seeing no angel. He was seeing, well, I guess the devil was an angel, right? He is an angel. Fallen angel. A bath of molten lava. Yikes. Why would they have blank rounds? I don't know. I don't know a whole lot about it. I was reading about it before the live stream, but I don't see any reason why they would have blank rounds. Jim Minshall. I don't think Brian's confessed. I think he's pleading not guilty. Like, he's fighting just as hard as Richard Allen over there in the Delphi case. He'll never admit to what he's done. What's up, Diamonds?
We have a veteran journalist joining us in the studio now. During her time with the Associated
Interesting
Press,
story
Jennifer
here.
Doudna here was one of the witnesses for Ronnie Lee Gardner's execution. He was last convicted a criminal to be executed in Utah back in 2010. He died, if you'll remember, by firing squad. Jennifer was one of the media witnesses during that execution, and she joins us now to talk about that experience. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
So walk me through your preparation leading up to the execution of Ronnie Lee Gardner. When did that begin for you?
Well, I had been a longtime criminal
Okay, Cheeks, that makes a whole lot of sense. And that did kind of cross my mind. I was like, man, they must feel like shit after they kill somebody. Like, I would hate to be part of that firing squad, you know? You'd be like, now you're a murderer. But that kind of helps. I believe I read in Utah it was 5 shooters. So maybe it's a total of 10 people and only 5 active. But yeah, I think that would be nice to know that you weren't responsible. But I think the shooter would know. When you're looking down that gun, you can kind of see where, you know, where your bullet is hitting. So if you're aiming somewhere and then you see, you know, an impact wound, you're going to know it was you. Just the rest of the public wouldn't know. Or witnesses anyway. But yeah, that's very interesting. That does make sense, Cheeks. Absolutely. For the shooter's benefit, they won't know if they actually killed. I know for a fact if you're looking down that rifle and right where you're aiming, you see an impact wound, you're going to know. Nobody else will know, but you will.
justice reporter, and I had been covering capital punishment, so it was interesting to me as an issue. And when I was offered the opportunity to do that for AP, obviously I had been reading about the method.
Melissa, I'm actually looking forward to the Gabby Petito documentary.
Of you know, capital punishment, different methods of capital punishment. So I was familiar with the firing squad. I also had a couple of colleagues, one at AP who.
Okay, so it looks like they got it all figured out. Cheek says, well, the shooters are trained to shoot in the same place. So I wonder if they're going to aim for the heart, because it doesn't look like they're aiming at the man's head. Each state that has firing squads was different. Generally, they shoot in the heart, so you never really know. Okay, yeah, that'll work.
Works in Texas, where they have lots of executions.
Thanks, Cheeks.
Or a lot more than we do anyway. And two from when I had worked at the Deseret News who had witnessed the previous firing squad. So I spent some time talking to them about what to expect and just to prepare myself sort of emotionally and mentally for something that is not something you forget once you've been in the room.
Did you feel like you had to bolster yourself before going in there, brace yourself for the experience?
I don't know if brace myself, but I mean, because as journalists, we sort of have like a pair of pants for the workday and a pair of pants for our real life. So, you know, you do a lot of things in journalism that aren't regular for other people. And so I didn't feel particularly concerned about that, but I did want to.
Danny B, I don't know. I feel like if your heart is exploded, I think it would be instant. I think it would be instant. You're going to have like air traveling through your veins. Well, nothing's going to be traveling through your veins. So yeah, I think it would be instant. Or fairly quick anyway. Oh, okay. Don says, I don't think they can see the weapon is pre-aimed. They just pull the trigger. Yeah, so you can tell they've actually figured it out. Because that is a dilemma. Like, because I want this person to be put to death, or they need to be put to death, but I don't want to be a murderer. But I guess anybody that wants this person or found him guilty or decided to sentence them to death, and then you're also part of the administration. I mean, I guess you're a killer, right?
I did not want to be completely surprised by what I was going to experience. So I felt like for me, that was the right thing to do.
Can you walk us through that day, what it was like getting to the prison and walking us through the process?
Yeah, sure. So at the time, the prison was still at Point of the Mountain.
That's what I was thinking. That's kind of how I envisioned it in my mind. Miss Doglover, like just a total explosion. And then maybe 10 seconds later, you're gone. Because you're not going to have any blood flowing through your veins, no oxygen getting to your brain. So I think it's very similar to maybe getting decapitated.
So we made the trek down there in the afternoon. The executions always occur sometime after midnight. That's partly because they can lock down the prison more easily, have fewer people moving around to sort of control the environment. So
what's going on, Audrey? News is saying a vehicle exploded near El Paso Airport. Yikes.
I don't know, we drove down there, we hung out for a while at one of the offices, and then they had a room set up with tables because the firing squad executions always draw media attention from around the world. So there were a lot of journalists in the room who were not going to be witnessing. I mean, by state law, only 9 media witnesses can participate. And so, but there was a lot of interest in the coverage. So we went there in the afternoon, I want to say around 5 or 6 o'clock, late afternoon, 5 or 6 o'clock. Went out, sorry, I keep messing with my hair. Went out to the parking lot where Mr. Gardner's family was, overlooking the prison, to talk to them for a little while. He had asked that they not witness. For him, it was a better choice, I guess. And so they were having a little gathering to talk about him and remember him and go through their own grieving process, because certainly that is difficult for the families of the condemned, as well as it is for the families of the victims.
Absolutely. Hey, Julia, they have self-driving cars. Can't they have some sort of self-shooting guns in a firing squad? How about one of those robot dogs, and then just put like a machine gun on top? Have you seen that? No, this account. That's important. Let me see. Let me see what you have to say about that. What is going on with all of these plane crashes? Been more in the last month. Yeah, there was one here, and it wasn't really a plane crash. They were on the ground when they crashed. So technically it was a plane crash, but not your typical they crashed after they had landed. It looks like it may be a terrorist act. What do you guys think? Maybe it's the Mexican cartel. I'm looking up any news about that explosion in El Paso, and I'm not really seeing too much about it. So if you guys want to share information on that, we can talk about that too in the chat. And maybe we'll go live about that when we finish up here. This isn't going to be very long.
And then they moved us. We drove down to the prison.
Death by robo
and then
shooting
they
dog.
Put us in a.
Here, let me see if I can find that video.
Totally awesome or totally frightening. Look at this. China's military has released this video of a four-legged robot marching through a field with an automatic rifle mounted on its back.
Hold on.
The Chinese state broadcaster calls it the newest member of China's urban combat operations. The robot dogs are programmed to conduct reconnaissance, identify the enemy, and strike the target. If that
Yeah, this is what we need right here. Just send that thing in there. Just program it, and then, you know, the robot will take the blame. We'll say Elon Musk did it. Yeah, something about Motley Crue, some musicians. Melissa, this is whatever we want it to be. I'm sick of people complaining. I think I've had enough.
Awesome or totally frightening. Look at this. China's military has released this video of a four-legged robot marching through a field with an automatic rifle mounted on its back.
Look at that.
The Chinese state broadcaster calls it the newest member of China's urban combat operations. The robot dogs are programmed to conduct reconnaissance, identify the enemy, and strike the target. If that thing comes around the corner and if you're on the other side, you're done.
Yeah, over.
Totally awesome or totally frightening.
What would you do if you saw that thing coming down the road?
China's military has released this video of a four-legged robot marching through a field with.
That's terrifying. Crazy.
Let me say, so we drove into the prison, and then they take us in, and they take you can't bring your own notebook, you can't bring your own pen, you can't.
I've been very concerned about all that. I live in Arizona, so I'm concerned with the drug cartels. I mean, they literally drive around our freeways holding 50 cal rifles, waiting for shit to pop off. So if you have somebody like Donald Trump declaring war on the Mexican drug cartels, we're going to start seeing explosions and shit like that.
Wear any jewelry, you can't have your cell phone, put everything in a Ziploc bag, and they write your name on it.
Very controlled.
It's very controlled. Yeah. And you know, you don't think about that, but anything at the prison can potentially be used by someone else to try to take advantage or escape.
Because I can't handle it right now.
And then they moved us in vans to the other part of the prison facility where the execution chamber was, and then we walked in and we stood in this room with a big window and at the backside of a curtain, waiting for it to happen.
Was that surreal to be there?
I don't know if you think about it at the time when you're doing it, you're doing your job, but in hindsight, yeah, it's a little, it's pretty different.
So he's sitting in this chair, essentially, right?
Actually, he was, so in the old prison, the execution chamber is like a rectangle, and there are witness chambers on either side, rooms with the same sort of thing, a curtain and a window. Okay. And so we all sort of press up against the window to see what's going to happen. And then when they open, he was already sitting in the chair. And the chair, I'm sure you've seen pictures, it's a black metal chair that's kind of on the front end.
Yeah, they really will. I'll chop your head off. No joke.
Legs are higher than the back end, and it's on a little riser, and then there's plywood, 2x4s, sort of the long way, perpendicular to the wall, and they're all painted black, and there's sandbags around. Which
we see those right now.
Yeah,
and the slits in the window where the riflemen are.
And then there's the gun port, where they line up, where the 5 executioners line up and are randomly handed.
Danny, the sleuth crew does not need a robot dog with an automatic rifle. Yikes. So I thought this was interesting. They actually had some journalists go sit down and witness a firing squad execution. I don't know. Something seems really strange and off about that. Thank you, Danny. Yeah, that's crazy. It looks like a terrorist attack over there in El Paso. 4 people are dead, apparently. Oh, 4 injured. Sorry. The area near El Paso Airport was evacuated. Dang. That's scary. That is very scary. Yeah, she went to counseling. Apparently. Danny B says, my first super chat ever. I'm honored. Thank you. Because we definitely need it right now. Coming in clutch. Thank you so much. Okay. So prosecutors received mental health and medical records from Brian Koberger, the man accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students. And I think there's some records in there pertaining to his family members. I don't know why, but they definitely want to keep that stuff hidden from the public. And we can all understand why, I'm sure. The Idaho County judge unsealed those records last week. Koberger was bullied and abused by his peers growing up, and the effects it may have had on his mental health as an adult could factor into the sentencing as his defense team fights the death penalty. How is that going to help him fight the death penalty? Because you're bruised or because you're bullied, you're allowed to go commit murder and not get put to death? Like, I don't understand the logic behind that. Is it a license to kill or what? Boston says, I don't want to see the sleuth intuition channel going into the coal mines with the hard hat and flashlight. Either do I. I want to sit right here. Coveralls with an axe pick. Tool riding on one of those carts. So I hit like and share. Thank you, Boston. It's really that simple. Like, share, and comment. And this channel will explode. I got the black lung pop. I'm a merman, not a mermaid. It's absolutely absurd. So the real reason I wanted to go live was just to kind of recap. There was a good video. I think it's a 2-part series by Fox News called Inside the Idaho Murders. I'm sure you guys have seen it, but we'll probably watch. We'll stop and go in and out. And we'll just kind of comment as we go along. And then we'll bounce out of here. It's pretty long. This is like 20 minutes. Fox 13.
I remember the day that we first heard about it, and we heard 4 college kids killed over in Idaho.
New details in the deaths of 4 University of Idaho students. Police say the 4 victims were targeted, and the killer or killers used a knife or other type of edged weapon in this attack.
For now, police are calling the deaths homicides after responding to initial reports of an unconscious person.
This video serves as a really good timeline. I forgot about all of the drama at the beginning where they were accusing that teacher. I think it was on TikTok. And everybody online was convinced that they were onto something.
On a road near the University golf courses.
We do not have a suspect at this time, and that individual is still out there. We cannot say that there's no threat to the community.
It wasn't until the days that followed that we really understood the magnitude of what happened and the horror of what happened in that house.
The county coroner gave out new details about the stabbing deaths, saying that the students were in their beds, likely asleep when they were killed. The coroner telling News Nation that she believes that the killer.
So, do you guys think that's why Brian Koberger came in at night? He's like, I can kill 4 people. I really want to kill 4 people, maybe more, but I'll have to do it when they're asleep. Do you think that he chose that time of night so that he could accomplish his goal with pretty much zero resistance? I mean, do you think that was like part of his planning, or you think he even considered that?
Must have been very angry in order to stab 4 people to death.
This was obviously someone who was enraged at these victims. They were knifed, and the people, the police and so on, who came to the scene said that this was the bloodiest crime scene they'd ever seen.
And the blood.
Miss Doglover says this case made the main news here in the UK. I thought we were dealing with the serial killer, and if he wouldn't have been caught, I think that's what we're dealing with. This is the fledgling killing, and there may be more. There's 2 other cases that we thought may have been connected to Brian Kohberger, and they still may. We may find more later on down the road. But when you look at this killer, before you even know about Brian Kohberger, you can't help but to think about a serial killer, right? Somebody like the BTK. And then now that they've caught Brian Kohberger and he's studying the BTK and taking criminology just like the BTK, it's terrifying.
It tells you
scary thought.
Stories. The blood tells you stories, like reading the blood spatter. You can read the blood spatter.
Of course, we heard that he followed all 3 female victims on Instagram and on social media, and he also allegedly incessantly messaged one of them.
And we didn't hear a whole lot about the stalking aspect of this. I mean, what information do they have that Brian Kohberger was stalking them, potentially following them? Remember, the BTK, he did something he called trolling. So he started out trolling, and that's how he targeted his victims. He waited for somebody to kind of stand out to him, and then he began stalking. So if you have somebody like Kohberger studying the BTK, Dennis Rader, maybe he's doing something very similar. So when did he first come in contact with the Idaho 4? Does anybody know? And what's going on with the stalking claims and all of that stuff? Because I totally forgot about that. Oh, quick side question. Have you guys heard that they found an ID in Brian Kohberger's vehicle that belonged to one of the victims? I found an article about that today, but there was only one, and I couldn't find any supporting information about that. Do you guys know anything about that at all? Let me know in the chat, please.
And I can tell you, he was obsessed with one more of those girls. They were the targets. The other people were killed because they were there.
These bright young lives, these kids with so much promise.
Yep, it's back. This
Evil
account.
had come stalking them in their house in the middle of the night.
Investigators gave us an update on the rumor that one of those victims may have had a stalker. Fox 13 News reporter AJ Janovo joins us live from the newsroom tonight. Now, AJ, you've been following this story. You were just in Moscow last week.
It was early enough in the process that I didn't realize the scale of what this was going to be becoming in the next few days and weeks and months and now years.
When this happened, I was an anchor in Boise, Idaho for KTVB at the time. My task that day was to, look at.
Stephanie says he probably selected the nighttime to operate in the cover of night. Is that what you're saying? He kind of used it as camouflage. Danny says, I would think so. I don't think he seems that strong to be able to overpower people who are wide awake. I mean, he's a large man. He's probably naturally strong, but I guarantee he's not any stronger than Ethan. I'm sure Ethan could have overpowered him if he didn't have a knife stuck into his body. He would have kicked his ass. And that might be part of Brian's Kohberger's frustration, being bullied, feeling weak, feeling powerless, and he's going to go get that power back. Don says yes, yes, and yes. So I guess cover of darkness and the fact that your victims are going to be sleeping, right? That's all beneficial to the assailant.
At these statements and look at the social media pages and really just find out who these students were.
Today marks a week since 4 University of Idaho students were murdered, and police have not named a suspect yet. The coroner giving out new details about the stabbing death, saying the students were in their beds, likely asleep when they were killed. Police have also released a map and timeline of events before this tragedy. They say the night began with 2 of the victims at the Corner Club in downtown around 10 p.m. The pair left at 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah, you guys remember all that footage, the Corner Club and all of that? I mean, people online, they really thought they were onto something, huh? Damn, what do I do with my folder here? What's going on, Cindy? I don't know. Moscow, Idaho looks like a pretty chill place. Honestly. I don't know about that name. Vandals? Why does our campus keep getting vandalized? I don't know. It's strange. It's odd. I went in when he wouldn't be seen, everyone asleep, so they'd be unaware. Like, what the hell was going through his head when he walked through that front door? See, the problem with these types of people is it's probably exciting. It's probably very similar to us, going and standing in line for a roller coaster. And then we sit down on the roller coaster and it starts going, our adrenaline starts pumping. I think that's why these people do it. I think they get off on it like that. I think it's literally like a drug to them, maybe. And then to do it with this huge knife, that K-bar knife, like, what is that? If this was a fledgling killing, this was his first attack, I wonder if he would have used the same method again later. Like if it had become part of his MO. Because he fucked up with the cell phone stuff. I mean, he's a criminology student. You think he would learn to possibly go get a burner phone or something? I mean, why was he using his own personal phone? It's almost as if he wanted to get caught. Like he wanted to go through the trial and he wanted to go and make this into a high profile case and be caught and go into the history books. So maybe he was considering self-harm, but people that love themselves, they don't really do self-harm, right? Like Richard Allen. It's like, I'm not going to hurt myself. I'm going to go hurt somebody else. So maybe he was thinking about hurting himself and decided he was going to go out in some kind of sick blaze of glory. I think the trial and all of this might even be part of his fantasy, part of what he was trying to accomplish. The Corner Club. I mean, this looks like a chill little spot. I definitely, if I lived here and was going to college in this town, it's someplace I'd be hanging out. The Corner Club. So I thought this video was really good. It brings up all, the original information and stuff from when the crime just happened. So I thought you guys would enjoy that.
And headed to a food truck down the street. At the same time, their roommates, the other two victims, were at a...
Oh yeah, the food truck. I think I have that video too. At least I thought I did. Oh, here it is.
No, it's amusing though. It's fun to watch other people miserable. Yeah. Have a good night. Bye. Hello. Hi. Welcome back.
Thanks. I think I would like the car,
So bizarre to just be living your life one moment. Like right at this very moment, Koberger is like going through his plans. He's going through his kill kit. He's probably putting on his outfit, his bridge guy outfit, the mask, all black. And these guys are just living their lives.
Can I have like a free drug test on my app?
Oh, yep. So what you want to do is we'll actually do this. I'm about to make you show you your work in the gym. It's still light.
Cool. Thank you.
Absolutely. How many more do you need?
Yeah, we talked about that, Stephanie. Remember that's It could have been like a gateway crime. A lot of serial killers, they might do things like that: animal mutilation, lighting fires, and then they kind of work their way up. They do a lot of stalking, voyeurism, and then I think even sneaking into people's houses while they're in there, and just kind of watching them sleep and fantasizing how easy it would be to just commit the murder, and then eventually they just do it.
Party at a fraternity. Both groups went home for the night around 1:45 in the morning.
You know, a lot of crime doesn't happen in Idaho very often, but when it does, it seems like it's really weird or really bizarre, and it sticks out and it gains nationwide attention. And the fact that it happened at the University of Idaho, you know, at an off-campus housing was just, it really resonated with so many people. And it put
I think you're right, Rain Dancer. Rain Dancer's talking to Mustang saying maybe he thought one of the girls was alone. Yeah, maybe it was intended to be 3 victims or 4. Maybe he wanted 4 victims, but he wasn't expecting one of them to be a male, possibly. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't understand what he was doing. He's just running around this house stabbing people. Like, what is he trying to accomplish? Just pure, it's like just pure chaos.
the entire state on edge.
It was freezing in Moscow. There was snow everywhere, and you have this secluded home, which for, at this point, probably a week, if not longer, still has the police tape around it. And through one of the windows, you can see a neon sign that says good vibes. And that just was such a weird and haunting thing to show up, know what happened here, and kind of see this glimmer of a life.
When I think of this case, I think my mind initially goes straight to the picture of the 4 students. I mean, them smiling, not a care in the world.
It's almost like it's a posed picture that was created for this moment. It doesn't seem realistic, like that they all would be together, that they would all be smiling, they're on each other's shoulders, they're so close. And that image is so tragic.
It was Kaylee, it was Xana, it was Maddie, it was Ethan. They were 4 students, 4 individuals, 4 people who, you know, were sisters and brothers and daughters and sons. And yeah, it hit home.
They were
One sec. Sorry about that, guys. I had somebody at the door. Oh, they lost their AirPods.
very attractive, very popular, very smart, very cool kids. And they fit into who an incel would hate.
What's an incel case?
Involuntary celibate. Maybe he'd met him and they brushed him off, or else he just didn't have the confidence to approach him.
If he did commit these crimes, he was
Definitely get incel vibes
somebody who was fantasizing about some type of relationship between himself and certainly the one that he was incessantly messaging, but just what that relationship might look like, who knows where that fantasy was going.
Their psychological issues don't just
Later,
pop
Don.
out then, and that's when they act on them, but it's been brewing for a long time.
Hannah and Brian, police have actually remained fairly tight-lipped about certain parts of this case. No suspects have been arrested. They're looking for a fixed blade knife used in the murders.
Why use a knife to murder?
I'm not a psychologist, but it's up close and personal, and it's a lot more, just like strangling, it's a lot more personal than shooting somebody, and you're a lot more involved.
Let's go to Freudian. Let's look at Freudian terms. Like, it's very phallic, and if you are using it to kill somebody and stabbing somebody repeatedly, there's something very intimate about it. And if a killer chooses to use this choice of weapon, usually it's a feeling that's very personal. It's very penetrative. It's extremely violent.
Has he been evaluated?
Yeah, he must have been very angry. Like, what the hell is he so angry about? What's up, Cammie? Right field. Welcome in.
I mean, what's going on in his head? What do we know about him? When you look at like people like the Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway, or like, Ted Bundy, these people, they're wired completely differently. Is he one of those people?
Is this guy a psychopath? Maybe, maybe not. It's hard because they work at trying to act normal.
There's also arguments about another incident that happened in another house. Was he looked at? Was it somebody else? If it was somebody else, maybe that's somebody else that did this. Something I've always thought is there's nothing in nature that can be, sliced so thin that it doesn't have two sides. Evidence doesn't lie.
To think that the real killer might still be out there and it's not Brian Kohberger, that's a terrifying thought.
Who has that thought?
Because that means this could happen again. And no one would know why or when or how.
Nobody's thinking that.
I can't even imagine what that would mean for the families.
We have tips coming in. We have investigators out every day interviewing people. We're still reviewing evidence.
There are still.
Rain Dancer says, I saw excessive narcissism with descriptions of Kohberger, but there is probably more problems. What do we know about the bullying stuff? I mean, did any of his friends come forward and talk about that? Any of his old classmates? Did they say that he was extremely bullied? Did he have like a journal? Where are they getting this information from? Is it coming from his direct family, like his mother, father, sister?
More questions about the murders that remain unanswered, with a murderer still on the loose 25 days after these slayings.
In the first few days after the murders, it was a little bit frustrating because the police were not putting out a lot of information. And so there was a lot of speculation about what happened. You see these beautiful young women that get murdered, and you start thinking back to the days of Ted Bundy. I mean, this is an area famous for serial killers here.
It's the first thing I thought about. Ted Bundy and Ridgway. These are and the BTK. These were the three serial killers that popped into my mind, and this crime reminded me of. And then come to find out, Kohberger was actually working with Dr. Ramsland. Yeah, that's no coincidence.
Gary Ridgway, we've got horrible murders that scarred communities for years, that had women looking over their shoulder everywhere they went.
It's been days since the police department released any new information in this case. The last major update was released 2 weeks ago on December 7th. That's when police say they were looking for a white Hyundai Elantra spotted near the crime scene the night of the murder.
There was a time there where police were holding these news conferences, but they had really nothing new to report. I'm sure he was probably watching that too, right? What do you think was going through his mind then?
What happened?
Yeah, I think all the way up until he was caught, there was a
What were you thinking, CJK? What was the first thing that popped in your mind when this was announced, this crime that took place? My first thought was, that sounds like a serial killer. We don't know much about Kohberger's sexual deviation. The murders seem to be more pure rage. If I had to guess, Rain Dancer, I would think that somewhere in Pennsylvania near his childhood home where he grew up, he has a special place. Someplace out in the woods, like a tree house or a fort or just a special area that he would go to. And I bet you he was mutilating animals out there, doing a lot of weird shit all by himself.
Sense that he was smarter than everybody, and now there's a cat and mouse game going on with the authorities. And on the other hand, if he wants the attention and wants to be caught, he would have felt excited. I would think that there's a level of, okay, now they're getting on to me. Now, how long is this going to take?
I think as the case stretched on, the public was getting very, very irritated and just wanted to know who the killer was.
Well, today, the Moscow police issued a press release with no new information, only updated numbers on how many tips they've received. They've gotten more than 7,600 emails, 4,300 phone tips, and 4,500 photo submissions. Police keep saying cyber sleuths are causing issues for police investigating this case.
Oh, I'm sure people thought they were helping. I'm sure they thought
Cyber
they
sleuths.
were scouring these videos that everyone else was looking at, and perhaps they saw something in these videos that maybe police missed, or maybe someone else, an investigator, missed. But I think there's a difference between you calling someone and saying, police, I saw this in a video, versus me starting a TikTok and saying, I know who the criminal is. I know who's behind this.
Yeah, he was a little bit bigger, huh? Like a chubby kid. And he didn't have I guess he kind of had those crazy eyes, but not completely like he does here. Look, he's gone completely batshit. Hey, what's up, Laura? How you doing? Yeah, I get Ted Bundy vibes from some of these photos. Yeah, that's the photo I was looking for. Yeah, he's pretty big here, huh? Like, damn, he lost all kinds of weight.
When really you didn't.
Now, a history professor from the University of Idaho is suing a TikToker for spreading rumors. TikTok
sleuth.
personality Ashley Gillard accused Professor Rebecca Schofield of the murders. The lawsuit, filed Wednesday, points to a number.
See, this is the kind of shit that goes on that I don't like online sleuths who think they got it all figured out, right? This goes on a lot with the Delphi case too.
Videos posted to the platform that attempted to tie the teacher to the killings. The TikTok personality posted a video yesterday saying she is not going to stop posting videos.
Photos start getting.
Welcome in. Jay Westcott says Brian Koberger has a big fan base. Yuck. A lot of people think he did not do it. It has gone full Delphi. There's just people that they have a dark heart. They're always going to vote for the bad guy. They don't really think that he's innocent. They might think, hey, well, there's one thing to say, I don't think there's enough evidence that this guy did it, but there's a good chance that he is guilty. These guys are just like, no, he's innocent. We love Richard Allen. We love Brian Koberger. There's something not quite right about that, if you ask me.
Linked of the girls who are out the night before they're killed. They're out getting some food. You start to see the guy they're with. And so the public, the online community starts latching on all this. These keyboard crime fighters start trying to solve the case. They must be that guy.
That's well said. Rain Dancer hit it right on the head. We all want to be Sherlocks, right? We want to be helpful. We're good at problem solving. That's likable. But staying with the truth, absolutely. It's even more likable. Great comment, Rain Dancer.
Was with them.
Great
You can
comment.
see they start trying to analyze their body language, start trying to look at how they acted.
The Moscow police kind of were non-existent in the reporting that we're doing. I don't remember going
Adam Lanza was a freak.
To any specific press conferences
Red
where
Sauce, what
police
up?
were kind of providing information. A lot of what we were getting was through social media. It was through.
Yeah, that would be tough. Red Sauce says maybe he lost all that weight and found out women still didn't like him. He's like, man, I did all that work. I got skinny. Well, they like him now. He's like, maybe I'll just go commit a bunch of, maybe that's why he committed the murders, guys. So he could have what he has right now. Even though it's behind bars, maybe it's fulfilling to him. He's like, well, I'll be in prison, but there's always hybristophilia. So maybe his goal and his main objective was to be exactly where he is right now, sitting in that courtroom, cameras on him, true crime YouTubers talking about him constantly, and all of these girls gushing for him. Nobody liked Brian Kohberger. Nobody liked Fatty Kohberger. And nobody liked skinny Steve Buscemi-eyed Kohberger. But now that he's committed these murders and is most likely guilty, look at these sick pieces of shit gushing over him. Shame on you.
Facebook, and it was tough. It was almost as if we were walking through a movie set that the cast wasn't on. And so this was the first time that we saw that community of that school fully with that concern of, are we safe?
Absolutely, Laura.
Nearly 3 weeks after the gruesome stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students, their pairs will be coming together tonight to finally say goodbye. And what makes this case especially terrifying is that the killer is still on the loose.
Fox 13's AJ Janovo joins us live from the Kibbe Activity Center in Moscow,
And don't forget, this is the same guy that had his father fly all the way from Pennsylvania. He flew in and then immediately drove across the entire United States of America with him. And then when he got home, he's walking around with fucking purple rubber medical gloves. And even his sister was like, this is so weird. Like, this is very strange. He's literally walking around the house wearing rubber gloves. I mean, the guy's guilty.
The vigil set to begin at 5 p.m.
That was the first time, realistically, that we heard their names said correctly. That was the first time we heard about these young adults, who they were.
The beauty of what they have and what makes them special.
Such a happy, such a great kid, such a perfect little baby.
Because everything up until this point had just been like a picture and a name. And that was the first time that we had heard from the people that it truly impacted.
To make sure that you spend as much time as possible with those people, because time is precious and it's something you can't get back.
Toward the end of the evening, the dome went dark, but only briefly, as members of the community illuminated the dome using their phones, a reminder that even in the darkness, there's a path forward.
I think, at the end of the day, it was terrible, but the entire state came together and they were able to, grieve together and support these families together. And sometimes that, something beautiful can be born out of tragedy. And that was something really beautiful to see.
And we ask that the memory of Ethan, Kaylee, Xana, and Madison be a light that dispels the shadow of these days.
Do you think
And I think Brian Kohberger is a lot like an arsonist, right? I think he wanted to create this atmosphere, like he's directing his own horror movie. I think he wanted to sit back just like an arsonist after they light a fire. They kind of get their lawn chair and they sit back, they watch all the sirens, the police cars, the ambulance, the fire trucks, all the commotion, all the bright lights. I think that's probably what Kohberger was trying to do here is to create this almost like his own Hollywood movie. We have memorials that we're watching. Everybody's crying for these victims. And he's like, I did that. All of this, I did it. This commotion, this ripple in time, this slice through space and time, this destruction that I've caused, I did this.
attended the memorial, the vigil that happened?
I would guess that he would have, yes. He wants to see, how much damage he did.
See,
The
there you
more
go.
damage, the happier he would be.
It's another
Exactly.
part of their work, if you will, of their art piece. This is a part of it. It's like, I've done this thing, and now I get to see, how people are responding to what
Yep,
I
absolutely.
did. It's pretty egocentric.
But it's hard to murder 4 people and not leave evidence behind, no matter how smart you are. I saw so much speculation online about the killer, about the motive, about somebody seen on video with the girls.
I'll be right
the
back,
night
guys.
they
I'm
were
going to go to the
murdered.
restroom. I'm going to turn on my
And
heater.
I talked to a lot of
and I'm gonna go
detectives
to the
about
restroom
this,
real
and
quick.
pretty much every one of them said,
Just continue
just
watching.
ignore that. That's just noise. That's not evidence. These days, they rely a lot on the science. And ultimately, it was the science that led to the identification of Kohberger.
Live from Fox 13, this is breaking news.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. Again, we've just learned that a suspect is in custody connected to the killings of 4 University of students.
A man in his mid-20s taken into custody about 3 o'clock this morning, found in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
A nationwide manhunt for a killer ends here in the Poconos. Brian Kohberger, the man police say murdered 4 college students in Idaho last month, is in custody tonight.
Kohberger.
We're trying to answer who Brian Kohberger is, the man who moved from Pennsylvania to study in Pullman, and what could have possibly been the motivation behind stabbing 4 unsuspecting undergrads.
Weeks after the attacks, People magazine is reporting that when Pennsylvania police arrested Brian Kohberger at his parents' home, they found several pictures of one of the women.
The New York Times investigation pulling the curtain back on Brian Kohberger.
So the newspaper found social media postings from Kohberger from 2011, and in them he wrote about not feeling emotions.
I wanted to start looking into the mind of this man and figure out what made him tick. Why would he do something like this? And the comment I got was, that boy ain't right.
You know, a lot of individuals, they will start off with fantasies and things like that, but they'll never think that they'll cross the line. It seemed like several escalating factors then led to the final decision to take out his rage on these people.
So in his fantasy world, was he picturing the police investigation and figuring he'd get away with it?
I'm sure he was. Yeah, I'm sure he was, which it's always the worst mistake, you know.
Thinking you're smarter than the cops?
7 long weeks coming down to this.
Last night, in conjunction with the Pennsylvania State Police, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, detectives arrested 28-year-old Brian Christopher Kohberger.
The man accused of the brutal crime behind bars.
When I first saw Kohberger, what shocked me was his lack of emotion. Look how composed he appeared, with the world's eyes on him, being accused of being a mass murderer, and it almost seemed like it didn't affect him at all.
He looked creepy. It was weird just to see him, but also we all want to know who was that person, and now we see him. And my thought was, that's the guy. That's the guy.
Something that looked in his eyes, you think he's a normal guy, but the boy just ain't right.
It seemed like he had a mask on, if you will, or you never really got a sense of who he was. And I don't think that'll change now.
He was arrested in eastern Pennsylvania. Take a look at his mugshot. Records say that he was taken into custody at his parents' gated community earlier this morning.
The images were very, I guess, visceral. Him just kind of with a motionless face and in this bulletproof vest. For me, this was at the time the answer to a lot of questions.
I agree, Red.
We did learn what is inside these bags taken from Kohberger's home. That evidence includes a black disposable glove, multiple suspect hair strands. Investigators also found a dark red spot in the apartment and sampled it for testing. Reddish-brown stains found on a pillow and multiple mattress covers with stains.
What we do know is their DNA match. We know it's the sheath. We know that there's evidence that he'd been at the place before. You know, we've got phone.
There's talk that there was an ID from one of the victims in his vehicle that he took as a trophy. Has anybody heard that? Don't quote me on that. That's more of a question.
GPS, location evidence. We've got the fact that things were found in his apartment at Wazoo. The evidence that he was throwing out, that's a big piece in Pennsylvania. You know, and of course the car. I mean, that was a description of his car that led to him in part.
The warrants allege Kohberger studied other murders and how to avoid detection as part of his preparations.
Yeah, this shit right here is really creepy. This is the part that kind of creeped me out about the whole Brian Kohberger case.
Kohberger has said he believes the evidence in this case will exonerate him.
The facts will exonerate me is such a braggadocious way when you have been walked across millions of television screens in handcuffs and your face has been plastered next to these victims. I will prove that I didn't do this. You will see that I didn't do this. It was kind of like a stage that he had created where at the time I thought he was going to represent himself.
Would he ever testify? I would highly doubt it. But I don't know. I'm not a mind reader. I don't know. I mean, they're going to need to defend him. And one other thing to consider is as they're trying their case.
So what I was referring to, Brian Kohberger, the suspect in the Idaho college murders, is reported to have created a questionnaire, which was essentially a community survey aimed at gauging potential juror bias. That's not what I'm looking for. That's the defense survey. Do you guys remember, apparently when Brian Kohberger was on social media going to school, he put out some kind of a survey asking people what they would do, how they would commit the murder, how they would escape, how they would leave the scene of the crime. So he was basically doing the research for this crime that he committed.
On the guilt phase, they're also trying their case on their sentencing phase, trying to humanize him.
The 28-year-old attended Northampton Community College, where he made the dean's list at least 2 semesters, then graduated DeSales University in his home state of Pennsylvania with a master's in criminal justice. This fall, he moved to Pullman to begin his first semester at Washington State, seeking a PhD. Some of those that knew him in school describe him as professional, nice, mature. His prior research includes this,
tickle.
A survey targeting responses from criminals asking how they committed their crimes with prompts like, why did you choose that victim?
Here we go.
Before making your move, how do you...
Okay, let me run this back. This is what I was talking about right here.
Includes this, a survey targeting responses from criminals asking how they...
So he's reaching out to criminals who have already been convicted, who are in jail, and he's asking them about what they would do different and things like that. It's really creepy. So he's prepping right now. He's gathering data for what he's about to do. This is like something that we now know as a red flag. So if we see this again, we know what it is.
Committed their crimes with prompts like, why did you choose that victim? Before making your move, how did you approach the victim? And how did you leave the scene?
This is a person who...
So he got some bad intel. Because he used his own cell phone, used his own vehicle, you know, like he didn't do enough research. Good thing, or else he would have been probably at least 2 more victims or incidences.
Is interested in criminology because he could be a criminal and he's trying to figure out how the criminal mind works. I think that he probably had a pretty active fantasy life is my guess. We heard that he followed all 3 female victims on Instagram. And
yikes. That reminds me of another case. I'm gonna have to find that. That's a good point, Cindy. Kind of like very egotistical. Cindy says, I'm still not convinced he didn't commit the crime to see if he would get caught, and if he did, could he win? I think you might be right. And if he didn't win, I think he would be okay with it.
and on social media. That at least tells us that if he did commit these crimes, he was somebody who was fantasizing about some type of relationship between himself and certainly the one that he was incessantly messaging.
Red Sauce says he needed to know what it felt like. So he was obsessing as a criminology student, studying serial killers, probably fantasizing himself, and he just wanted to know what it felt like. That's what that one guy said to law enforcement when they found a head and hands in his room. Remember? In the interrogation, he said, I just wanted to know what it felt like. And he said it wasn't anything like he thought it would be.
But just what that relationship might look like, who knows where that fantasy was going.
I knew that it was an incel. And I actually gave interviews talking about the murderer being an incel. This is before they had any idea who it was, before they arrested him. He has had a hard time throughout his life finding a date, finding not just a date, but finding a woman who loved him, who wanted to be with him. And so that's a lot of time to fester. There's evidence that Brian was following these 4 students around. We know that he went around the house several times before the night of the murders.
You know, a lot of individuals, they will start off with fantasies and things like that, but they'll never think that they'll cross the line. And then all of a sudden, certain accelerants happen, and now they've crossed the line. And I think that's what happened in this case.
He was
of Idaho murder suspect Brian Koberger was arrested. This woman couldn't believe her eyes.
I recognized him immediately and my heart just sank because I couldn't believe that I was face to face with this guy.
Nurse Haley Willett says they met on Tinder in 2015 when they were both psych majors at Pennsylvania colleges. He took her to a movie, then insisted on escorting her to her dorm room.
I was kind of afraid to say no, so I just let him come in with me.
Then he did something she says she'll never forget.
He kept trying to tickle me and I would ask him to stop, or I'd say, what are you doing? And he would be like, I'm not tickling you. And he would get very serious.
I'm not tickling you. You're tickling me.
Talked to
tickle
a couple of weeks before the killing by professors who were telling him that he wasn't doing a great job. He was acting differently towards the women students than towards the men. He would put the women down.
He was already getting warnings and they were going to let him go from his position as a TA. Escalating factors then led to the final decision to take out his rage on these people.
We're finally getting pages and pages of concrete evidence in the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. The affidavit in this case reveals a surviving roommate came face to face with a man in black, partially masked, but with bushy eyebrows moments after the stabbings. And that partial description and security video of a car like the Elantra that Brian Koberger drives allowed investigators to focus on him within a couple of weeks of the crime. The biggest break, though, in the case may have been a small metal clasp connected to the murder weapon, which had all important DNA evidence on it.
So anybody that thinks Brian Koberger is an innocent man, the only way to make that make sense is that law enforcement planted that, or the real killer planted the sheet there, right? That's how it always works with these people.
So in his fantasy world, was he picturing the police investigation and figuring he'd get away with it?
I'm sure he was. Yeah, I'm sure he was, which it's always the worst mistake, you know.
Thinking you're smarter than the cops? You got a master's in criminology, but I guess not a graduate degree in actual murder.
For some killers, the planning is the most exciting part because that's the time they have the most control over everything. So they have the idea of exactly how it's going to go. They probably have mapped out the inside. I'm sure if he did this, probably had a sense of mapping out the inside.
But in the heat of the moment, you don't think that way. You don't act that way.
I wonder if Brian Koberger actually went to that home. Remember how they were always throwing like parties and things there? I wonder if he went there or snuck in the middle of the night prior to this. I wonder if he's ever been in that home.
He carried a knife in there in the sheath, which was his first mistake. He took it out and either dropped it or sat down, then forgot about it in the frenzy, walked by other people he didn't even see.
Yeah, why wouldn't you have the sheath like attached to your belt? Like, why are you just carrying a sheath and a knife? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So that's the thing. No matter how these guys, how many times they plan it, and how much time they spend planning these types of things, there's always going to be that variable. And that's how they're going to get caught. And that's how you catch them.
You know, because he was in the tunnel vision again, that I said.
And a huge adrenaline rush, too, I would imagine.
Yeah, huge adrenaline rush, yeah.
He was in kind of a
about
fog
right,
at that
Red
point, like
Sauce.
a killing fog. Like he just finished doing these things and he was now just needing to leave.
So his cell phone pinged again from the house about 5 hours after the murders. There's always this thought that the killer returns to the scene. Why would he come back?
Well, maybe he wanted to see if anybody discovered it yet, see if the police were there.
It seems to me that I think he came back early, like it was around 9 o'clock or so when he came back, and they hadn't called the police yet. So I'm sure he must have been very confused as to why.
And then things probably started.
Okay, so why did he come back? Did Brian Koberger come back so that he can do like what I said earlier, act like the arsonist? He wants to sit back and see all the bright lights and see all the commotion and the chaos that he's created? Or was he coming back for the knife sheath?
Falling into place in his mind, and he realized, oh my God, I've left the knife sheath. And then he's frantically debating with himself, should I go back in and get it? Because that may have been what was going on in his mind if he did not mean to leave the knife sheath. I could imagine him frantically going back and forth in his mind, should I go back in and get this thing because I'm going to be, excuse my French. I've gone kind of one of two ways when I've talked about how somebody who's getting his PhD in criminology could, if he is guilty of these crimes, how could he make so many mistakes?
Yep. Dark Side, welcome in. Yeah, didn't they recently say there's actually unknown male DNA? Well, at every crime scene, there's going to be tons of DNA that's unknown. You know, fingerprints, unknown DNA. And I would expect that, especially when there was a huge party there. I agree, Darkside. We'll find out during the trial. But even then, anybody that's supporting Brian Koberger right now, they'll just say that he was railroaded. The judge was in on it. It's Judge Goal again. Well, he does have an alibi, Laura. He said he was just driving around. You know, he was getting some fresh air. That's why he was where he was at that time. It's not a verifiable alibi, but at least he has one. I mean, even Richard Allen didn't have an alibi. Yeah, maybe. That's a good point, Danny. He's probably like, I never touched this knife without rubber gloves on. Danny B said, I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't worried about the sheath because he probably thought he was too smart to leave DNA. You're probably right. He's like, you know, they can't get DNA off leather, but he didn't think about the little metal button. Good thing he made those mistakes. Later, Rain Dancer. Have fun at your meetings. Don't fall asleep. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We're about to get out of here in about a minute. Cheeks, did you check out that documentary I linked yesterday, Sleuth? Pretty crazy. Yes, I did. I absolutely did. Absolutely. Whoa, whoa. What are you doing, Red Sauce? Getting a little excessive. Thank you. That's crazy, dude. Speechless. Thank you for supporting my channel, Red Sauce. Thank you so much. Getting a little flush over here, dude. That was extremely generous of you. No, it's not that much. It's Norwegian kroner, but love to support you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Us Norwegians got to stick together. I appreciate that. I don't think a jury will put a lot of weight to his alibi. I don't know. If I was in that area, I think I would be looking somewhere near that river because they tracked his phone near a river and then back up. So I'm assuming he went to that river to dispose of that knife. Maybe we can do a review of, I'm guessing it's free media at this point. It's amazing to see how crazy these people are. Yeah, that's a good idea. That is a good idea. Now you're referring to the chicken hawk thing, right? Yeah, me and Riot were watching that earlier today. I didn't finish it because I got a little angry, but yeah, let's do that. That's a good idea. All righty, guys. Thanks for hanging out for the live stream. I appreciate all of you. Big special thanks to Red Sauce and Danny B with their first super chat on my channel. I don't want to get a big head or anything, but yeah. Yeah, Chicken Hawk, the one guy, Leland in the yellow, was absolutely, they're all disgusting. Like it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. So it's like, oh, I can't watch this right now. And that's when I started going in. I was like, I'm going to check in on the whole Kohberger case and see what's going on. And I decided to go live. I think we're going to go live again a little bit later tonight. Depending on if I have insomnia, we'll do a call in or something like that. Something real quick. But that's going to wrap it up, guys. Thank you so much for supporting my channel. Thank you for the super chats, the donations in the chat. Thank you so much for the Cash App. Don, I know you're not here anymore. But if you watch the rest of this video, thank you guys for supporting my channel. I couldn't do it without you guys. It means a lot to me. And possibly we're right now 50-50. I'll see you guys tonight. Laura C, Danny B, Cheeks, Dark Side, Boston Christian, Red Sauce, Rain Dancer, all of you guys, I love you. Thanks for hanging out with me and all the support that you provide the channel. It means a lot to me. Alrighty, guys, you take care.
Bye.